Good afternoon, everyone. I asked to be a part of this because, as Viola said, it is personal, but it's also a professional duty to tell our stories and to do it with cultural competency and sound scholarship. My publication and documentary has been in the works for years, and I have been blessed to really acquire very rare things. For an example, I have a photograph with Dr. Charles Drew standing right there, okay, along with the members of the Old Dominion Medical Society. But I'm going to give you a brief overview as to why this hospital moved here. It was organized, as Viola said, in 1902. And when it started with a nursing school because these men and women knew that we needed to lift as we climbed. Okay? You're going to find that if you examine the Black hospital movement or the history of it, you're going to find affiliated nursing schools along with it. When we talk about the Black hospital movement, officially, most sources state that it started in 1891 with Dr. Daniel Hale Williams's creation of Providence Hospital in Chicago. So this hospital still remains as one of the earliest under that Black hospital movement. We talk about health equity today. These men and women realized the necessity to produce or create hospitals of our own because they too looked at the numbers. Even though we could be treated at places like MCV in damp, dark basements, they knew that we could do better than that. So for 2 or 3 reasons, the Black hospital movement came into being. Number 1, for race pride. Number 2, for continuum of care, because you could take your patient all the way up to a white hospital, but you could not treat them as a Black doctor, not even at St. Philip. Okay? And number 3, the Black hospital movement was necessary because our doctors needed continuing education. If all of the surgery skills you've learned or acquired at Meharry or Harvard or Howard aren't utilized, then you tend to lose your skills. So does everyone understand why those Black hospitals were necessary? Why do we need to keep this place? It's because today, everyone, there are less than 10 hospitals in existence, probably 6 or less in America that started out as Black hospitals, that were founded as Black hospitals, that have been in continuous operation. This one started as the Richmond Hospital and Training School for Nurses in 1902, and it is Bon Secours Richmond Community Hospital, of course, in Church Hill. I am blessed to be the biographer and the first person to conduct a full-length lecture on Dr. Sarah Jones. So I'm her biographer for the African American National Biography, which was published by the Hutchins Center of Harvard University and Oxford University Press. I've done extensive work on all of the founders, and the stories are powerful. So as we talk about health equity and the underrepresented people that are in the health professions today, these people really provided us with a blueprint, and that's important. Dr. Zenobia Gilpin and dentist Dr. Jesse Tinsley were founders of the Virginia Conference of the NAACP in 1935. Okay? And Dr. Tinsley led that organization for 20-something years. When we talk about organizations, I'll just mention the major Alpha Kappa Alpha project. Dr. Zenobia Gilpin, along with Dr. Dorothy Farabee, who was a Norfolk native, teamed with other women under the auspices of the national AKAs, if you will, to travel down to Mississippi, where they ministered to and actually provided immunizations to thousands of people who had never even seen a doctor, who still lived on plantations during the 1930s and 40s. And so we can look at organizations, vast organizations, but one thing I'd like for you to take away is that profound sense of collectivism. I'd like to leave you with a powerful story, or I should say charge, going forward. And that charge comes from the 1896 class of Hampton Institute, where I earned my degrees and joined the faculty at the tender age of 24. I've been blessed to be a medical educator, a practitioner as a pharmacist and also a medical humanities scholar. With that being said, and back to that charge, the charge for the 1896 graduating class of Hampton was find a way or make one. Find a way or make one. There are no exceptions, there are no excuses under that, right? That year was a pivotal year because if you remember, 1896 is where the Supreme Court came down with that separate but equal doctrine, and it would not be overturned until Brown v. Board. And we're right across the street from one of the most brilliant civil rights lawyers of our time, Spotswood Robinson III. And speaking about that, I felt, oh yes. And I want to mention while we're talking about that, it's not by happenstance that this building was built here. Now, I've never heard anyone talk about it, but it was hoped that Union would add a medical school to the university. So it's not by happenstance. With that being said, how many of you are aware of the fact that Virginia Union once had a law school? Yeah. Anyone? Not many people, okay? From October 1922, about 1931, there was a law school. And Spotswood Robinson's father, Spotswood Robinson Jr., was a summa cum laude graduate of that law school. So if he hadn't have graduated, where would we be if the third did not follow in his footsteps? Okay. So with that, I mean, you had prominent physicians here. I should say prominent pastors here. Dr. Stokes of Ebenezer, and Maggie Walker's pastor, Reverend W.T. Johnson, also, and Emmett Burke, who was president of Consolidated. All of these men graduated from Union's law school. And so we have much to share about our own legacies here. There's no way you should graduate out of here without knowing these things. Okay? So with that, going back to finding a way or make one, instead of simply settling for being treated in damp, dark basements, these men and women got together, like others did, and founded the Richmond Hospital and Training School for Nurses. By having this institution, you then had, in the 1930s, the ability to have black physicians coming out of med school. You had the ability to provide them with certified internships. That was very important because you could graduate, but it was very challenging to find internships and that kind of thing. And so what did Richmond Community do? Yes, they found a way and they made one. When it was time to move over, and as I speak about the medical school, it's important to know that in 1905, they amended their name and charter to the Richmond Hospital Medical College and Training School for Nurses. And they had the professors here who were actually some of the founders. They had the professors necessary to actually pull off that medical school. I know who they are. They taught anatomy and physiology at Virginia Union. You had Dr. D.A. Ferguson, for an example, who was the founding father of the National Dental Association. He lived right across from Maggie Walker, and I am also his biographer. You also had several of the doctors who taught the nurses on the faculty of Virginia Union, as I just stated, Dr. R.C. Orozco Brown, and countless others. These were brilliant men and women. Now, although Dr. Sarah Jones and her husband were not the only two founders, they were the primary ones. How do I know this, or how do we know this? It didn't start until Dr. Miles Jones, her husband, completed his internship out in Chicago, and then it was founded in 1902. Okay? Both Dr. Sarah Jones and her husband were teachers initially, and she graduated from Howard University's medical school in 1893. And like any good husband, he followed in her footsteps and became a brilliant surgeon. So Dr. Miles B. Jones actually was the surgeon-in-chief for the majority of the tenure of both sides of this hospital until he died in the 1930s. So what did they do? They found a way and they made one. So whenever we run into impediments or things that perhaps flummox us or just really divide us, if you will, we must hunker down and look at that history and do what the countless others have done before us, and find a way or make one. And in all that we do, audience, it's imperative that we always attempt to honor the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. Thank you.